All right. I think you could get started, Jackie,
Okay,
because we
fantastic.
we have the hackathon awards and
Oh
closing,
yeah,
so we can definitely use the time.
use the extra time. And fortunately, my presentation's coming in at about 40 minutes. So
You could take as long
hopefully,
as your presentation takes.
oh, thank you. That's so kind. Alrighty, so we'll start off by once more calling out this wonderful cause that we're all raising money for the doctors, for the nurses, for the EMTs and the paramedics, for the support staff, the janitorial staff. This is a really wonderful cause. I know things are super, super weird out there right now, but if you have the ability to donate, again, really worthy cause, and the community pulling together like this is really something to see. So if you could help us get to our goal of 10,000 euros, that would be absolutely fantastic. We'd all really appreciate it. Next, although I am the final presentation, so I'm sure all of you already know this, there is still a breakout room, chill out lounge, which you can join during the whole conference. I certainly hope you won't join right now and that you will stay for the presentation. But we wanted to give you a place where you could speak to other attendees and other Sitecore community members about anything in particular. The first rule of the breakout room is that you don't share this information on social media. We're trying to avoid, as the slide says, Zoom bombing and trolls. And the second rule of the breakout room is don't share this information on social media. We're trying very, very hard to have nice things. During this time of social distancing, this is a nice thing. So please respect the rules and have a good time. And then the final housekeeping item before I get started. We all love engagement. We love to interact. If you're going to live tweet this or post about it on LinkedIn or Facebook, any of your social networks, please use hashtag SUGCON. And you can always @me. I have put my phone in a drawer for the rest of this presentation, but I will be responding to everything afterward. And if you'd like to tag the SUG conference and help us get the news out about this wonderful event, that would be very much appreciated. All right. Without further ado, let's get started. The 4 Ps of Sitecore profiling strategy. I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about customer experience. And customer experience is one of those really interesting things in our industry because customer experience is something that is a little bit hard to define, but that everybody knows when they see it. And although very few people need data, I brought some because it's never a bad thing to have data points to back up your evangelism and the soapbox that you're standing on. I've spent a lot of time, especially in the last 6 weeks that I've been closed in my house, thinking about what makes a great customer experience. And the conclusion that I've come to is that there seem to be 2 sides of it, which are actually all supported by the same things. So from a customer perspective, what I'm looking for is an experience that is engaging, an experience that is honest, and an experience that's personal and personalized to both me and my interests. And from a marketer perspective, I want to create an experience that, of course, leads to visitors becoming advocates for the brand, that creates referral and retention and profitable growth. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that those are actually the same thing, because you want to create an experience from both sides that is engaging and honest and personalized. And that's why it surprises me a little bit that more Sitecore customers aren't taking advantage of these profiling tools, because they really are an excellent way to create that kind of engaging and personalized experience. Because the thing is, a good customer experience doesn't just happen. It's the result of hours of work, of configuring and reconfiguring, of listening to your customers, striving to be helpful and be engaging at every turn. Exceeding expectations is something we should be striving to do every day, right? It's not a one and done proposition for any brand or business. It should almost be a way of life, just sort of how we operate and how we think about the customer experience. It's basically constant, never-ending improvement, which is something we should constantly be striving for. And I said that a couple of days ago to a coworker who said, "You are exhausting." So I know that about myself, but I stand by my point. And even more relevant to this presentation specifically is that we've been handed an excellent tool in making that happen with Sitecore profiling, right? Implicit personalization, which is one of the things that profiling and profile cards really help us with, is one of my favorite ways to use the personalization tool set, because it's all based on what the customer is actually doing, what they're actually seeing, what they're actually interacting with. These tools are a perfect representation of that. And these are the tools that I'm talking about, specifically these four. The sharp-eyed among you may be thinking to yourself, well, there's not 4 Ps of profiling strategy, there's 6. And you're not wrong. I have left off X profile, which is also sometimes known as the visitor profile. And the reason that I've done that is because that's where the data is stored and analyzed rather than where it's built and deployed. I have also left off persona cards, and I've done that because they make me tired, and it's my presentation and I can do what I want. So no persona cards. Instead, we've got profiles, profile keys, and profile cards, as well as pattern cards. And the first 3 specifically are all really relate pretty tightly to content profiling, and then profiles and pattern cards relate more tightly to people who visit our website, right? These are all incredibly valuable tools. I'm going to say that about 19 times. And they're especially valuable when it comes to getting to know your audience and talking about personalization. When these tools are properly configured, when these tools are properly established, they can tell you where your customers, again, are actually going, what they're seeing, what they're actually doing. And personalizing on something like a pattern card can also be a little bit less ephemeral than personalizing based on the visit, because the pattern match will store in the contact card unless and until it's changed by further interaction with tagged content. It's my personal opinion that most brands really just kind of get down and bogged down in the what is happening of all of this, because I can be perfectly honest and admit that it is a little confusing that they all start with the letter P. We're sorry about that. I'll take that opportunity. Just say we're sorry about that. And they're not necessarily as easy to explain as some of the other value adds of the Sitecore marketing suite. And so customers, in my personal opinion, take one look at this and they just go, nope, thanks, but nope. And then they think about it a little more and they come to me and they say, why is this happening? What is going on? And it all finally ends with them thinking about it for a second and then going, nah. But it is my personal opinion, again, that the more you learn, the less you fear. So we're going to take a step back and really dive deeply into these tools, all 4 of these, and talk about not only a little bit more about how they work, but some tips and tricks that you can use to make it easier to use them as you go through. So let's start with profiles. A profile is how you categorize visitors. That could be the activity. It could be a product that the customer wants. It could be the department of an organization with which the customer is interacting. If you wanted, it could even be the amount of money that the customer is willing to pay. When you set up your top-level profile in Sitecore, essentially you're defining how you'd like to represent the relationship that you have with the customer. That's it. That's the core of profiling, of profiles. So a couple of things to know about this. When you set up your top-level profile in Sitecore, you're given 3 options. You're told average, sum, or percentage. And what that determines mathematically is essentially how the radar chart is defined. Personally, I recommend percentage. I just think that's the easiest to reference and to visualize, as well as to communicate. But you do have the option, any of the three, your mileage may vary. And this is also where you'll set the decay rate, which is incredibly useful and is often overlooked. It's especially useful given that persistent profiling is now common across Sitecore versions. So essentially what you're doing when you set the decay rate is you're defining the percentage by which a contact's profile score should decrease at the start of each interaction. So for example, let's say that I, who love to travel and am dreaming of the day when I could travel again, am browsing a resort brand. And by the time I end that session, my solo traveler profile score is 100. The brand has set the decay rate on solo traveler at 50%. So if I come back a few days later to look through the options again, my solo traveler score has reduced from 100 to 50, which essentially just helps reduce the relevance of scores that were accumulated in the past. So that's profiles. Profile keys are really the foundation of behavioral targeting in Sitecore. You have maybe seen the term profile values sort of close to or alongside the term profile keys. Profile values are specifically the numeric values that are assigned to profile keys. And you set those using a minimum and a maximum value. For those of you who are members of the community Slack channel, which should be all of you, please come join us. It's a great place to learn and engage with your fellow community members. We had quite a discussion about this back, I think, in February, maybe early March, on the digital strategy channel in the community Slack. And after quite some discussion, we sort of came down with 0 to 10 profile value, like using that scale of 0 to 10, gives you the range, which allows you to A, make a mathematically usable pattern, which is very important. And it's also a very common scoring mechanism because 100 as a total is almost universally acceptable. And it's good to keep in mind, specifically with profile keys, that there is a personalization rule that can be used to personalize certain content based on profile key values that the visitor has matched in their patterns. So all of this is very interconnected, but I just wanted to mention that it's really important to keep that in mind, that you actually can personalize off of profile key values that the visitor has matched in their patterns. And a good example of that is like profile key 1, which is say appliances, has a value greater than 5, which is probably and or possibly a value accumulated from multiple pattern cards. So that's something to keep in mind. And that brings us to profile cards, which are strategically assigned to Sitecore items, not people. So here's when we start to talk about the things that you build with profile keys, right? Profile cards contain groupings of profile keys. And once they're built, profile cards are then assigned to Sitecore items. So a few things to note about this specifically. You do need to set an authoring selection manually. By default, you're only able to assign one profile card per high-level category. So if you want to get a little bit more granular, you want to make sure that you switch from the default to either multiple or multiple with percentages. The difference between that being that if you select multiple, it will auto distribute the percentage total between the profile cards that you've selected, whereas multiple with percentages allows you to set the percentage weight as you see fit. I personally use multiple with percentages quite a bit because I like to have control over things. When you're building a profile card, once again, you assign individual profile keys of value from 0 to 10. However, with profile cards, you can do that without regard to sum. So you're not adding to 100 per se. So you can build those cards as best suits your business categories. And really quick safety tip, I learned this one the hard way. Don't be like me. Do take the time to create an icon for each profile card, upload them, save them, use them, love them. It will save you a ton of heartache down the road because it allows you to sort of tell at a glance which profile cards are assigned to which items. Benefit from my experience, learn from me, use those. They're incredibly, incredibly valuable. I promise you won't regret it. And that brings us to the last of the 4 Ps, pattern cards. So pattern cards are assigned to people. They are not assigned to items. So once you build them, a visitor and deploy them, build and deploy, a visitor, as they travel through the site, they're collecting those profile values from the content, right? Sitecore then calculates the score that the visitor has collected, and it maps the visitor to the closest, to the pattern card that is the closest match. A couple of things about that. The page depth for a pattern match to be mapped is 3. What that actually means is that matching starts on the 4th page that the visitor hits. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're building these pattern cards, or if you're seeing that pattern cards aren't being matched, check your page depth. Sitecore uses basically an algorithm to decide which point the visitor is closest to. Specifically, the measurement that they use is called n-dimensional Euclidean distance to calculate which pattern card a contact accumulated profile value most closely resembles. I am not a math person. If you are also not a math person, all you need to know is that the algorithm decides which point the visitor is closest to, and now you know the term n-dimensional Euclidean distance, which you can throw around at parties. So don't say I never gave you anything. You can also set pattern cards to be calculated by sum or average or percentage. Again, percentage is pretty universally applied. That's the one that I recommend, but whatever suits your business case best, your brand best, your mileage may vary, and that's totally valid. And the final point is a visitor can only be mapped to one pattern card at a time, but their pattern match can shift as they travel through the site and as they interact with different items. So a pattern card match is not universal. That is a lot of information. It's a lot of information delivered very quickly. It's a lot of information about things that all kind of sound the same. And about a year ago, when I was preparing for SUGCON ANZ, I was looking for an engaging and helpful way to talk about these tools, because I am also trying to provide an engaging and helpful customer experience, and my customers and my clients, generally speaking, are Sitecore users. So I wanted to find a really fun way to talk about this, and I think I have come up with the best example of anything that I personally have ever thought of in my time on the planet Earth. Because I think that a little magic can take you a long way. And the more I thought about this, those of you who know me know that I'm an enormous Harry Potter fan. And I realized that profiling in Sitecore is essentially the Sitecore sorting hat. Because as our visitors interact with different profile cards, they are matched to the pattern card that most closely fits their behavior. They are basically being sorted into a category based on a predefined set of characteristics, which is exactly what happens at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. So for the probably 2 people on the planet Earth who don't know this, when first-year students arrive at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry on their very first night, they are summoned up to the front of the Great Hall, and this sorting hat is placed on their head, and they are grouped according to a predefined set of characteristics. So these are the 12 characteristics that the sorting hat is evaluating them against. And the ultimate goal is to sort the students into one of these 4 houses. So all of these characteristics are grouped according to these houses, And based on the grouping of traits the student most closely matches, they're assigned a house. So these are 12 broad characteristics that Hogwarts is engaging with, and that makes them profile keys by any other name. And they've been used to build larger groups relating to people and or to content, which means that the sorting hat is essentially using Sitecore profiling in order to map students into one of these 4 houses. So in this example, these are my 12 profile keys and these are my 4 pattern cards. And you could, technically and in theory, use the same combination of profile keys with the same value attached to build both the profile cards and the pattern cards. You could do that. But these profile keys, remember, they represent attributes that describe our content and our users. And those are not necessarily best represented by the same groupings. And so in this case, again, after I went away and thought about it a lot and being the enormous nerd that I am, I argue that content is actually better represented by another grouping, which is the careers that Hogwarts graduates can take up after they leave Hogwarts school. So as you can see here, I've used the same 12 profile keys to assemble a set of profile cards that I believe would more accurately relate to the content on my imaginary Ministry of Magic website. So this is what all of this looks like all together. I've got my 9 profile cards, my 4 pattern cards, and my 12 profile keys. And this gives us, just in general, a much more complete and accurate way to sort our visitors. So it is a little disappointing to me that there is no Hogwarts. But the great thing about my Sitecore sorting hat analogy is that it can be applied to real world brands. And I was thinking this process through, and I realized that the best way to illustrate this was actually to go out and to find some examples that would allow us to dive a little bit deeper into ways that accurate and dynamic profiles can be built. So I used 3 of my favorite companies. I actually did, I think, 9, because I really wanted to make sure that I had groups that illustrated my points sort of across the spectrum. And as I was analyzing these companies for these examples, it confirmed one of my long-held hypotheses, which is that these kinds of broad and distinct characteristics are actually a foundational part of many brands. They are often clearly identified on the website in some form because they're very, very useful for search and tagging and SEO. And once you have your profile keys, right, the next thing to decide is whether your site needs a one-to-one relationship between the keys and or the cards, between the keys and the cards, or a one-to-many relationship. So again, that was sort of my goal, was to make sure that I picked good and useful examples that demonstrate those options. I want to be very, very clear right now. This is the disclaimer part of the presentation. These are not my clients. These brands know nothing about me. They've never heard of me except as a customer and a name on their mailing list. So I'm promoting them. They have no idea that this is happening. I picked these brands because I love them. And the secondary theme of this presentation could very easily be things that Jackie loves. So I started with Innisfree. Innisfree is a Korean skincare company. They emphasize nature, they emphasize eco-friendly practices. They're actually South Korea's very first all-natural brand. And many of the product ingredients are sourced from an island that's also part of South Korea. And the company's products range, oh my gosh, they have everything. They have everything from like makeup all the way down to skincare products for men and for women. Side note, the sheet masks are insanely good. and the stores smell like the woods. So big positive plus there. If you're ever walking past an Innisfree, I definitely recommend that you swing inside. So I took a look at their website, and what I found was that they had a number of top level categories, and most of their products are actually tagged this way, again, for search purposes. But these are also an accurate representation of the broad characteristics that the brand itself is looking to engage with, because they have the products that would specifically address these concerns or these desires of their customers. So I took these profile keys, and as I was sort of thinking through the strategic application of them and using them to build profile cards and pattern cards, I actually went with a one-to-one strategy for this one, because this is the kind of company, again, where people are likely to want to see more products based on specific needs and or categories. But I also thought that this would give me the most flexibility in allowing visitors to match to a different card over time, because with a one-to-one, you've got the numbers dialed up so far that it's pretty likely that if somebody switched, it wouldn't take long for that other pattern match to kick in. So it would allow them to a little bit more flexibility in switching back and forth between, for example, the various types of skincare and, say, makeup. And that brings me to my second brand, although it's not really much of a transition, because my second brand is Powell's City of Books, which is a place that is near and dear to my heart. It's a Portland landmark. It is the self-styled largest independent bookstore in the world. There are, I think, 4 or 5 outlets throughout the Portland area, but the original is downtown, and y'all, it is an experience. It takes up a full city block. They have events, they have games, they have novelty items, and they've got books as far as the eye can see. They have color-coded rooms. The gold room is my favorite. And more than, I think it's somewhere north of 3,500 different sections. They are family owned, they are independent, they're consistently ranked on top 10 bookstores in the world lists, and they are also consistently ranked as one of the coolest bookstores in the world. If you're looking for a place to buy books, you can't do better than Powell's City of Books. They're awesome. They're also a lot different from a skincare company, because first of all, they've got a lot more categories and a lot more genres to consider. So when I was thinking about the profile keys, this one took a bit longer, quite a bit longer, in fact, because there are so many genres of books that it's almost impractical to try to drive traffic based on all of them individually, especially given how likely it is that people will be interested in more than one. So what I did was I took the most popular categories on the website, and then I refined them down based on similarity of the subject and cross-genre appeal, specifically to get these profile keys, because I wanted the broadest characteristics for my keys so that I would have the option of getting more granular as I went along. And so then so I have my profile keys, and that was very exciting. And then I dove into profile cards. And when it came to profile cards, again, I wanted to make sure that the sort of broad strokes, broad characteristics were represented. A little known fact about me, I used to be a bookseller back in my youth. And so I know about some specific genres like young adult, like romance, that people are sometimes a little bit less likely to cross in and out of certain genres than they are of others. I actually built about 25 of these, but they wouldn't all fit on the slide. So I refined it down to make sure that I had the best examples. And you'll notice that I have one-to-one and one-to-many represented here, because with a profile card, again, what you're looking for is a card that accurately describes the content, that most accurately describes the content itself, right? And if you need both a one-to-one and one-to-many matches to do that, that's totally okay. Like, you want to make sure that you have the best representation for your content. And how you get there is up to you. So those are the profile cards. Those relate to the content itself. And then we get into the pattern cards, which represent the readers and the visitors to the site. And you'll see, again, I went with a mix of one-to-one and one-to-many for the same reason. You know, I use the keys to build bigger buckets based on an analysis of which genres were likely to overlap to create a larger category. And that brings me to my final example, which is a really fabulous travel company called Pack Up and Go. So Pack Up and Go plans 3-day trips around the United States. You get in touch and you tell them a budget and you fill out a quick survey. They take care of the travel arrangements and the accommodations, and they do all of it while keeping your destination a surprise. It's incredibly fun. You get an envelope about a week before you leave that has a time and a place to present yourself at, and that's when you find out where you're going. So I did this last summer with a friend of mine. I was told to arrive at Portland International Airport at 4:30 in the morning, and that's when I found out that I was going to Austin. They had made all of the arrangements, and I spent a crazy fun weekend in Austin. And what made me think of them when I was putting these examples together is that they have, as I mentioned up top, this really fabulous survey that they send to you. And that survey asks you about these broad things that you're interested in, because they don't want to get too specific, because who knows, you might be going to a place that doesn't have a great nightlife scene, or you might be going someplace that doesn't have very many museums. So they ask you to, yeah?
Hey, sorry, your mic is going in and out. It's getting different. I don't know what the difference is.
That's weird. I have not moved or done anything, but let's see if that, does that fix it?
Fine. Maybe it's just me. I don't know, but it seemed like it was going in and out for a second.
Okay. Is this better?
Yeah.
Excellent. At least we had an interesting slide with beignets and a cute map to look at. Fantastic. All right. So survey, yes. So they send you this fabulous survey that has these broad, distinct characteristics. And the survey that you fill out during the booking has everything that I would need to plan a profiling strategy. Because not only do they want to provide an engaging and unique experience, they want to provide one that will surprise you. So they have to ask you these questions up front. They have to ask you what you're interested in so that they can plan the best experience possible. So these were the profile keys that I settled on. These are not everything that's represented on the survey, but again, what I did was I took the whole survey and I wanted the broadest buckets that I could find, and some of the questions that they were asking actually fell into other categories. So I used those to build my profile cards. But again, the profile cards are entirely one-to-one, which I did not expect when I started out. I thought that I was definitely going to have a one-to-many one in there, but I really didn't, for the same reason. These characteristics are broad enough as they are that all of the content can be tagged using these same characteristics, the same set of characteristics. So the challenging part, or the more fun part, came with the pattern cards, because then I could take these characteristics and I could build very dynamic pattern cards that would tell me a lot more about which type of audience I was trying to interact with and what they were interested in. And I was able to build these broad categories like culture and relaxation and outdoors by using those same keys. So really, it's not as challenging or as terrifying as a lot of us think. I know in some ways better than most that using these tools, it can become overcomplicated, right? Really quickly. It's very possible to get bogged down in the technicalities of it all, but it doesn't have to be that way. What I hoped to demonstrate, both with my absolutely fabulous Harry Potter example and also with these real world examples, is that most brands already have the foundation for using these tools. And these are honestly, this is just a few ways that you could go about doing it. There are lots of other paths that you can take to achieve that desired result. Because as with most Sitecore tools, it's really all about what best fits your brand and also what best fits the needs of your team. And going through prepping for this presentation, that was what I kept thinking about was, gosh, there's so many ways to do this. And every time I reached out to the community to ask a question, I got back so many great ideas and so many interesting use cases and things that various people are doing in this community that I decided it's definitely time for a white paper. So I'm going to be putting together a white paper that focuses on the approaches to Sitecore profiling strategy, including everything from interesting use cases to things you've learned to tips and tricks to get the most out of the tool set. And entirely community authors is my goal. I want to take a quick moment to say you do not have to be a Sitecore MVP. Sitecore MVPs are always welcome. I love them. I miss them. I miss being one of them. But you do not have to be a Sitecore MVP to participate in this white paper. If you would like to participate, I would love to have you shoot me an email, and hopefully we can get this white paper together and off the ground, start sharing this information with a much wider base of users. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, which I think means we have plenty of time for questions. I do also have my Slack handle here and my Twitter handle again. If there's any questions that you want to ask me, I'm pretty much always around on those platforms, but definitely open for questions right now, assuming everyone can still hear me, that I haven't just been talking to the air for the last 10 minutes.
No, we can hear you.
Yes.
It was just that one moment, it felt like it went in and out for a second.
Oh, which it very well may have done. My headset is old and tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just like 10 seconds. That was no deal. So all good. So we got a question that came in.
Great.
From Zach. I heard your comment regarding profile card making you tired. With that said, I've been wondering for a while, and I'm successfully trying to research why Sitecore doesn't expose the same persona field on the pattern card as they do on the persona item. I feel, though maybe I'm not mature enough, like a pattern card is more likely to represent a persona than an actual persona item. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I don't think you're wrong. Unfortunately, though, if wishing made it so, I'm sure I would do a great job building the product. I'm very technical, so I think that I'd be great. They should definitely give me that job. But I don't disagree with you. I do think that there's a couple of things like that, actually, that I've flagged over my time using the toolset, that it's just become obvious to me that the people who built it and the people who are using it are two wildly divergent groups of people. And the feedback from the people who are using it doesn't always get to the people who are building it. So I'll just take this opportunity to say, if there's something like that and you wonder about it, like, please feel free to shoot me an email. If nothing else, I realize I forgot to introduce myself. I'm just so cool that I think everybody knows who I am. But I do work for Sitecore. So if you ever have something like that, like, do feel free to shoot it over to me, and I'll be happy to forward it on to our product team so that they can look at it and tell me. Sometimes they have really good reasons for why something hasn't been done, and sometimes it's just that they haven't thought of it yet. So
sometimes it's just, this is how it was done. And
correct. Yep. That's
Yeah.
how it was done in 2010.
Yeah.
The
And
end.
now we don't know how to change it and do the migration.
I mean,
There's another question.
oh, great.
Where does 4Ps fall in relation to Sitecore AI? Sitecore AI will do all of these for us. Will Sitecore AI do all of these things for us?
I don't know.
As a
I know that
marketer in the job, you probably don't hope it does.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, I do always come back to the example of you show AI a picture of a sheep, and what it registers is that a sheep is a white thing on a green background. So if you show it a white kitten on a green cushion, it will identify that as a sheep. You know, AI is really only as good as the people who are teaching it. Lots of interesting problems there. As far as I know, Sitecore AI is not necessarily geared toward profiles and profile matching. There are, of course, the personalization recommendations, and there's a lot of testing optimization. So I could be totally wrong about that. Like, please do not quote me on this. I am not part of the Sitecore AI team. I do not build things. I only get memos about, hey, can you test this out for us? The thing I think to keep in mind about Sitecore AI is going to be traffic for a while. It takes a lot of traffic to make those recommendations usable. So if you are one of those brands that doesn't meet that traffic thresholds, then that's just something to sort of have in the back of your mind. It's cool, but it takes a lot of data to power an AI engine.
Hey guys, it's Alison.
Allison.
Hi.
Hi.
In regards to that question about, yeah, I asked to be unmuted. Thank you very much, SUGCON gods. In regards to the question regarding profile cards and Sitecore AI, or even when it comes to machine learning, it's really important to realize that what Jackie's been talking about is how to set it up. And Sitecore AI or the Cortex are not going to do the setup for you. You have to do the setup work first. So Sitecore AI, I believe, can use pattern cards in personalization, but first you need to set them up. And in order to set them up, you've got to understand them. So, you know, get on that white paper thing.
That makes sense.
And yeah, I'm not turning on the webcam because it's morning and I haven't brushed my hair.
You look beautiful no matter what.
All right, any more questions?
Everybody's like, hackathon awards, hackathon awards.
Sorry,
everybody's ready for that. Everybody's dressed. Look at them. They're ready. They're matching. I feel underdressed.
You're overdressed.
No.
You need a t-shirt.
Making us look bad.
Yeah.
Only I had a t-shirt.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good rest of your day. Thank you again.
You as well. Talk to y'all later.
All right. Talk to you later.